Okay, so hi everyone. So before we start, we will try to answer the following objectives. So at the end of our video lesson, we will try to explain the subtle distinction between Newton's first law of motion, which is known as the law of inertia. Now this is taken from our most essential learning competency or MELC with a subject code S11/12PS 4D51. We will also apply Newton's first law to understand the effects of applying a force on an object and cite the importance of Newton's first law in our daily lives. Okay, so are you ready with our lesson? So I hope we are all ready as we will jump to the next slide. Okay, so what are our essential questions? So let me ask you these questions first, okay? So what happens when I roll the chalk on the table? Will it continue to move or will it stop? I'll give you 10 seconds to answer. Okay, so basically, when you put a chalk on the table and then you try to roll it, then it will continue to move. Okay, unless you apply an external force or you put it into stop, or it will fall to the ground and another force will try to stop it. Okay, and we will know what are the forces that might cause it to stop. But basically, if we are applying the laws of physics, this chalk will continue to roll. Next, second question. What happens when I just place my mouse on the table? Will it move or not? Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds to answer. Okay, so when I try to put my mouse on the table, okay, it will just be at rest and it will not move unless I apply an external force on the mouse and try to transfer it from one place to another. Okay? Next. Now let us discuss first before we jump to our main topic. Let's first discuss who is the ones responsible for these laws of motion. So it's Sir Isaac Newton, born between the year 1642 up to 1727. So he worked out the three laws of motion governing the movement of all objects at all times in all circumstances. He also published his book Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, or the Mathematic Principles of Natural Philosophy, in the year 1687. So actually, Sir Isaac Newton provided three laws. The first law is law of inertia. Second law is law of acceleration. Third law is the law of interaction or the action-reaction. However, in today's topic, we will first try to focus on the first law, which is the law of inertia. Okay, so first law, also known as the law of inertia. Okay, so inertia is the tendency of an object to resist in its state of motion. The first law states that all objects have inertia. The more mass an object has, the more inertia it has, and the harder it is to change its motion. Now, this law is the same reason why you should always wear your seatbelt. Okay? So first, let me try to have a game. I want you to pick a number and then let us try to answer one of the questions involving law of inertia. Okay, you may choose from numbers 1 to 6. Okay, so you chose number 3. So let's check. Question for number 3 is, which of the following is harder to move? A table or a book? And why? Okay. I'll give you 10 seconds again to answer. Okay, so if we have two objects, one is the table and the other is a book, of course, according to the first law of motion of Newton, okay, it will be the table. It is harder to move the table because table has more mass compared to a book. Therefore, a table has more inertia, more tendency to resist movement compared to a smaller mass, which is the book. Okay? Okay, next. Now, when we check on our self-learning module or on module, we will just go to page 6, what's new. In our activity 1.1, we have this is a bowling game. A heavy ball is rolled down a narrow lane, aiming the pins. What makes the ball keep on rolling? What makes the pins fall in different direction? Okay, so let us try to answer that first using the first question. What do you think makes the ball keeps rolling? Okay, so I'll give you 10 seconds again to answer. Okay, so if we focus on the law of inertia, it says that it has a tendency to keep moving unless you put an external force, okay, to keep it or to stop it moving. So what makes the ball keep on rolling is the law of inertia. It continues to move. Okay. Another one. What makes the pins fall in different directions? Let's try to answer it. I'll give you 10 seconds. Okay, so pins fall in different direction because you have applied an unbalanced force or an external force. That is, you apply a force on the pin, okay, that's the bowling ball, which enables the pin to fall into different directions. And according to the law of inertia or the first law of motion, object will continue to move if you unless you apply an external force to make it stop. Okay, so let us try to answer the following guide questions. Number one, what keeps an object at rest and what keeps it moving? Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds to answer. Okay, so an object's inertia depends on its mass. So mass, again, what is a mass? Mass is the amount of matter or substance that makes up an object. It is measured in units called kilogram. An object with a greater mass has a greater inertia, and an object with a lesser mass will also have a lesser inertia. So that is the reason why objects at rest will be at rest and object in motion will continue to move because of object's inertia, which is also dependent on its mass. Okay, next question. What causes the object to change in motion? I'll give you another 10 seconds again to answer. Okay, to answer that question, we have inertia. Inertia actually resists change in motion. When an object is already at rest, it will remain at rest. If an object is moving, inertia will also keep it moving. Now, let's continue with question number 3. How does an object's mass affect its inertia? Okay, now let's try to answer it again. I'll give you 10 seconds to answer. Okay, so to answer that, an object's mass is also relevant or dependent to its inertia. That would mean that the more the object weighs, it has bigger mass, it also has a lot of inertia. That way, it is easier to move an object that has a lesser mass, means it also has less inertia compared to an object which has a bigger mass and a big inertia. Okay? Next. Let us do a critical writing or this time critical thinking. Let's think, analyze, and later share. Okay. So why do objects in motion slow down and then stop without an outside force? What do you think is the reason? I'll give you another 10 seconds to answer. Okay. So this is the reason because of friction. So basically friction in action is the reason why these objects has come to a halt. Alright? So friction is a force that opposes motion between any surfaces that are touching. So when you slide a book across a table and watch it to slide to a rest position, the book comes to a rest because of the presence of a force, and that force being the force of friction, which brings the book to a rest position. If there's no friction, the book will continue to move and slide. Okay, now again, why do you think the book stopped? Again, in the absence of friction, the book would continue in motion with the same speed and the same direction forever, or at least to the end of the tabletop. Okay, now let us try to check first law in action. Let's try to answer the following questions. What is the motion in this picture? I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay, so the objects that are in motion is of course the skateboard, and along with the skateboard is of course the skater that uses it. Next, what is the unbalanced force in this picture? Okay, I'll give you 5 seconds to answer. Okay, so as you notice, there is a stone. The stone is the unbalanced force in the picture that caused the skater to suddenly put into halt or stop. Next, what happened to the skater in this picture? I'll give you 5 seconds to answer. Okay, so as you noticed, the skater had an accident and fell from the skateboard since the stone caused it to suddenly stop in its motion and because of the unbalanced force. So of course, that's very unfortunate for the skateboard person. Okay. Next, Newton's first law in action. Why we should wear helmet or seatbelt. Okay, so this is the reason. So don't let this be you always wear a seatbelt. Because of inertia, objects, including you in it, in this case a car, resist changes in their motion. Now, in this case, when the car is going 80 kilometers per hour, it is suddenly put into stop by the brick wall. Your body keeps moving at also the same speed, 80 kilometer per hour. If you don't have a seat belt, you will try to have a very serious accident, and because if you have a seat belt, it will try to stop, okay, your motion. Okay, next. Now let us give an example involving the first law of motion. So, what do you think are another example of the first law of motion aside from the ones given? Okay, I'll give you 5 seconds to answer. Okay, so one example is the common experiment. The coin would be in rest unless acted by an unbalanced force. So if you put a coin on top of the glass, the coin will still be there even though you try to get rid of the paper that is on top of the glass. Okay, it will just continue to be there. Okay, and it will just continue to be there and it will just fall naturally because of the action of gravity on the glass. Okay, next. Let us try to focus on inertia in action, and these are the different demonstrations and experiments where it showcases the first law of action. Okay, so normally if we are in a classroom setting, we would actually perform these experiments. However, I will just show you this video so we can try to appreciate the different applications of inertia. Okay. So this experiment is known as the big stack or the wooden stack. Okay, as you checked, if you put a stack in there, okay, all of them are at rest. And then when you try to suddenly put a wooden stick, okay, it will still be there. It will actually take a lot of technique. The little stack will be at its place, okay, and it will not move because it is at the state of rest. Another is the experiment as known as the penny stack. So it is all actually involving the same technique or strategy. Okay, as you can see, all the penny are still in place. They are at rest even though you try to remove those at the bottom. Okay, again, it would take a lot of technique for you to be able to practice. You can actually try this at home as well for you to be able to appreciate. And then next is the balancing device. So if you use this balancing device, although this person tries to move, the balancing device will still continue in its position because of inertia. Unless you try to get it, then that's the time that it will be disturbed and cause an unbalanced force. Another trick is the pulling the tablecloth trick. When you try this at home, be careful and don't forget to ask an adult with you or try to make sure that you are be careful because it might break. Okay. So as you noticed, we have the following utensils because of inertia. All of them stays in place at rest even though you pulled the tablecloth. And another classic example is the pop bottle or quarters and paper strip. Okay. Normally, I do this in my class. I put a bottle and then a piece of paper or a piece of paper bill. Whoever gets the bill out, I will give it to them. Okay? So, part of your additional allowance. So, as you notice, because of inertia, the penny or the coin continue to be at the top of the bottle because they are at their state of rest. It's inertia. Even though you try to flip the strip of paper, it will continue at rest. So again, it would entail a technique. So the technique there is actually to make sure that you try to move it at a fast speed so that it will still be in its position. So a penny at 2.5 grams does not have a lot of inertia. So therefore, when we put it atop, okay, it doesn't always work. However, through constant practice, it should work fine. So there. So having in a slow motion, you will see a penny, which has a negligible inertia because it has a less inertia, will fall to the bottle. Okay. This one, you try more mass, more inertia. So of course, on its state of rest, it will still be at rest. It will fall just inside the bottle due to gravity. Okay. Then another example, try a marker. Alright, so very good. So there a marker will still be in place and it just fell down due to the force of gravity. So what happens if you use a larger hoop? The same will apply. Another one is the lead ingot hammer hand. Okay, again, do not try this at home because these are actually done by experts, and make sure that you have a lot of practice and make sure that you have an adult supervision. These are actually done by experts. So as you notice, the stone did not break because it has a lot of inertia. It was not deformed because in its state of inertia. And then the tissue pulling. Okay, so the tissue is still at rest if because it has a negligible inertia which enables it to continue at rest. So as you noticed, all the tricks entails you have a technique which has we try to apply it on a very fast speed. So there. The tissue still stays at rest. Another example is the ball drop, hollow blue plastic ball and the red billiard ball. So when you try to reduce the speed, 0.125 times the speed, all of them are able to fall on the ground at the same time. It will continue to move at rest unless you really put an imbalance force. And another experiment is Galeos Ramps. So this bowling ball experiment, as you notice, it will continually roll over and over again infinitely, unless you really apply an external force and you try to stop it. So again, this is a setup known as the Galileo's ramp. So at the top of the ball is just that. And at the other end of the ball, it's also the same. Another experiment is the wooden block, wherein you are using the PVC pipe. So good level of friction between the block and the pipe, the block does not easily slide. Right. Okay. So there, as you can see, the block, you can try to move the block if you try to apply an external force using that hammer without really trying to force it to gum upward. Okay. Then another one is the 500-gram masses tied above, strings easily snapped. Okay. So slow increasing force, you try to pull. Okay, so of course it is able to move because you apply an unbalanced force. But if you quickly jerk or try to snap, this pole will still be continually at rest and still be attached. So you will know the difference. Then we have the circular trucks, wooden pegs ball. Okay, so first, before we stop, okay, I halted it. What do you think is the prediction? Is it A, B, or C? I'll give you 5 minutes so that you can try to decide. Or sorry, 5 seconds. Okay, now let us watch. Okay, so if your answer is path B, then you are correct. So it will still continue in its circular pattern or motion unless you really apply an external force on it. Okay, so next, we also have the first law. Another example, a golf ball, okay, is once it is airborne, will continue to be on airborne unless acted by an unbalanced force that is gravity and air, known as the fluid friction, and it will never stop. Now, question. Why was it so difficult to stop the Titanic from colliding with the iceberg? I'm sure all of you are able to watch the Titanic show. Okay, so why do you think? I'll give you 10 seconds again to answer. Okay, so basically, the mass of the Titanic is very large. Since inertia is proportionate to mass, the Titanic could not change its direction because its extremely high inertia forces it to continue in a straight line, thereby not avoiding the iceberg but still colliding with an iceberg. That's why the biggest boat that was ever constructed, which is the Titanic, was sunk. Okay, because of an iceberg. Okay, next. We will showcase another application of the first law on daily basis, okay? So let's watch this video. Okay, so in this example, what do you think? Okay, I'll give you 5 seconds before we continue with the video. Okay, so after making a guess, let's continue. As you notice, it is opposite in direction. So wait, which do you think is it difficult to push? Is it the car or the bicycle? Okay, so I'll give you another 5 seconds to guess your answer. Okay, again, the greater the mass, the greater the inertia. The lesser the mass, the lesser the inertia. So basically, if you have the bicycle and the car, which has more mass? So of course the car. Therefore, it is harder to push a car because it has a greater mass, and of course because of that it has also a greater inertia. Okay. So again, okay, so again, it is also present in your self-learning module when we talk about inertia. It is the tendency of an object to resist change in its state of rest or in motion unless acted upon by an external force. Okay, next. So again, what are the three types of inertia? We have inertia of rest, inertia of motion, and inertia of direction. Okay, so next, we will try to differentiate the relationship between mass and weight. We normally say that mass and weight are similar. However, there is actually a difference. When we try to go to our school and we are actually asked to what is our weight, we're actually not asking about the weight because weight is actually in Newton. It is a force. Okay? Basically, what we are getting is our mass, and it is measured in terms of kilogram. So mass is the measure of the inertia of a body. The SI, or the standard unit for mass, is kilogram. Weight, on the other hand, is the force with which a body is attracted towards the center of the earth. The SI unit of weight is Newton. Mass is a scalar quantity. which means scalar is what? What do you think is scalar? Scalar means that you have magnitude only. So example, 2 kilograms, 2 centimeters. Okay. While weight being a force is a vector quantity. Vector means there is direction. So example is going north, going south. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. So again, it is a common misnomer. Mass is not equivalent to weight. We cannot interchange it because they are technically different. Okay, and to give a summary of all the things that we have discussed during the Newton's first law of motion, I will have the following vocabulary for us to be able to understand, okay, and not forget the things that we have discussed. So mass is the amount of matter in an object. First law of motion is also known as the law of inertia. Friction is a force that opposes motion between two surfaces. Gravity is the force that pulls objects that are not balanced by an opposing force which is directed towards the center of the earth. Motion is also caused by an unbalanced force. Motion is the change in position of an object or a body with respect to a reference point. Force is a push or a pull that tends to move, stop, change the direction, or accelerate an object. Inertia is the tendency of matter to remain at rest when at rest or to keep moving when in motion. Mass is the amount of matter in an object or a measure of inertia of an object. On the other hand, weight is a measure of the Earth's gravitational pull on a body or object. So the following terms can also be found in your self-learning module. So now, let us try to integrate the topic on the first law on different subjects. So let's answer this question. How can you relate the study of the law of um, uh, inertia, okay, or the first law of motion in terms of sports or in physical education? So I'll give you 5 seconds to answer. Okay, so in PE, when you're asked to run, okay, of course you try to run, and when you run, when your coach or your teacher suddenly asks you to put into stop, it is harder for you to stop, right? You will still continue to move, and then gradually you will be put into stop, gradually, but not really to put into stop immediately. So that's one of the factors that is affecting inertia. Another, how can you relate Newton's law to the introduction to philosophy, which is another subject, core subject? Okay, what do you think? Okay, I'll give you 5 seconds to answer. Okay, so if you remember when we are in having our subject, Introduction to Philosophy, we mentioned that we have a scientist, a philosopher, which is also known as the father of philosophy. So, according to Aristotle, natural motion and violent motion, there are two types of motion. So, according to him, natural motion refers to any object that an object does. So, it's similar to the law of inertia. So, example, when a book is placed on a table, it will naturally come into rest. Now, violent motion in our study of law of inertia, this time it's an external force or an imbalanced force. So, violent motion, according to Aristotle, pertains if you apply force to transfer the object from one place to another. So, example, if you deliberately transfer a book from one table and then transfer it to another table. So that is an example of motion, okay, according to Aristotle, and Aristotle is a philosopher who is also into the study of physics, okay. It's also related to our lesson, which is all about motion and application in terms of inertia. Next, why we should wear helmet or seat belt? Why we should wear helmet when we are having our daily hike, bike? Or when we have a car, why do we need to have a seat belt? I'll give you another 5 seconds to answer that. Okay, so first, there are basically two reasons. So we have two. First, because it is the law. So actually, under Republic Act 8750, otherwise known as the Seatbelts Use Act of 1999, it requires motorists or public and private vehicles to use seatbelts and car manufacturers to install these devices. The Mandatory Helmet Act of 2010 or Republic Act 10054 requires all motorcycle drivers and their passengers to always wear helmets and impose stiff penalties on violators. And the second one is we use helmets and seatbelts to save lives. It's also for our own safety and protection. And last one, what are the things that we should follow on road safety, which is relevant to our topic, which is the first law of motion? I'll give you 5 seconds. What do you think? Okay, so it includes use pedestrian lane while walking. Law of inertia states that objects at in motion will continue to move. So of course, it is very safe that you make sure that you walk in pedestrian lane. Of course, if there is a stop sign for engine and it is go sign for you to walk. Next, use helmet and seat belt. That is already explained earlier. And of course, be cautious and follow road safety. Okay, next. For our assessment, you can actually try to answer page 14 from our self-learning modules. Okay? So everything that we have discussed is also there in are present in our self-learning module. So for this remaining time, you can try to answer the self-assessment module. Okay, that's only 10 items. Use capital letters whenever you answer. And for your assignment, you answer the following. What I can do found in page 13 of your SLM. So just see your modules. So let me end this lecture with a quote. Drive as if every child on the street were your own. Okay, so do not forget to always make sure that we have a safety and follow the rules and procedures in our traffic, okay, to save lives. Okay, so if you have questions again, don't forget to write all answers on a piece of paper, one whole. Again, don't forget to write your name, complete name, and then the date, grade, and section. Then you also follow the subject. You write physical science, okay, so that it will not be mixed with other subjects. And then make sure that you label module. So this is module 6 of our SLM. Okay, don't forget to label. Okay, and then if you have questions, just simply chat me, or you can send a group message in our chat. Okay, so again, keep safe and have a great day.